Let's talk about 1692, Colonial, Massachusetts, a time and a place that went completely mad. A madness that led to neighbors accusing neighbors, courts believing the impossible, and 19 innocent people being hanged. This is the anatomy of the Salem Witch Trials.
It's a question that, honestly, never gets old. How does a community, a whole town, just break? What pushes people to such extremes of paranoia and violence? To get to the bottom of it, we have to go right back to the start.
You know the spark that lit this whole inferno? It wasn't a battle, it wasn't a crime. It was something much quieter, and in a way much scarier. A mysterious sickness that nobody could explain. So, I want you to picture this. It's a small, isolated Puritan village. It's the dead of winter, so everything is cold and gray. And the trouble begins in the one place you'd least expect it, inside the home of the town's minister, the absolute moral center of the community.
Now, we're not talking about a simple fever or a cough. The minister's daughter and niece, these two young girls, start having these awful, violent fits. They're screaming, throwing things, hiding under furniture, complaining that invisible hands are pinching and pricking them. And when the local doctor comes, he's stumped. He basically says, "I can't find any earthly cause for this." Well, for a Puritan in 1692, if it's not an earthly cause, there's only one other possibility: the devil.
So, who did the afflicted girls blame for their torment? Well, after being pressured to name names, they pointed their fingers at 3 women. And this is so telling. Look at who they accused. Not the powerful, not the respected. No, they named Sarah Good, a homeless woman, Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who didn't fit in, and Tituba, Reverend Parris's own enslaved servant from the West Indies. They were the perfect targets, complete outsiders. They were vulnerable, and that made them dangerous.
But here's the thing. This was never just about a few sick girls or a few outcasts. The whole colony was basically a tinderbox, just waiting for a match. You had this perfect storm of anxieties all brewing at the exact same time.
Just think about all the things going wrong at once. First, there's a total power vacuum, no real government, no one really in charge. That chaos fueled all this nasty local infighting over land and church politics. Then, you layer on this deep, genuine Puritan belief that the devil was real, that he was walking among them, trying to destroy their city on a hill. And to top it all off, you have the trauma of a brutal frontier war. Refugees were pouring into Salem with horrific stories of violence. These things all fed on each other, creating this feedback loop of fear, where every disagreement felt like a sign of the apocalypse.
So when the local authorities looked for guidance, you'd think maybe the top ministers would say, "Hey, let's be careful here," right? Nope. They did the exact opposite. They basically gave the green light, encouraging a vigorous prosecution. They framed this whole thing not as a legal issue, but as a holy war. With that kind of official blessing, the path was cleared for total madness.
Okay, so how do you prosecute a crime you can't see? A crime committed by ghosts and specters? Well, the court had to pretty much make up the rules as they went along. And in doing so, they threw centuries of legal tradition right out the window.
And the accusations just exploded. I mean, it spread like wildfire. This wasn't just a Salem village problem anymore. Before it was all over, more than 200 people, we're talking men, women, even some children, from dozens of towns were formally accused of witchcraft. And the human cost, it's just staggering. Of those 200 people accused, 19 men and women were taken to a place called Gallows Hill and hanged. Others died in the filthy prisons, and one man, as we're about to see, was tortured to death because he wouldn't play along with their system.
This whole insane legal process really hinged on one bizarre, terrifying idea, something called spectral evidence. The logic went like this: the devil can't take on your shape, your specter, without your permission. So, if one of the afflicted girls screamed in court that she saw your ghost pinching her, well, that was considered hard proof that you were a witch. I mean, just think about that for a second. How could you possibly prove that your ghost wasn't somewhere doing something terrible? It's an impossible accusation to defend against.
And the system moves so fast it would make your head spin. All it took was one person to file a complaint. Suddenly, you're dragged into a public examination where the girls start having fits right in front of everyone, blaming you. Based on that chaos and that spectral testimony, you were indicted and then sent to a trial where, let's be honest, the verdict was pretty much decided before you even walked in.
But not everyone just accepted their fate. There was this one farmer, an 81-year-old guy named Giles Corey. He knew the court was a total sham, so he refused to enter a plea. He wouldn't say guilty or not guilty. This was a clever move because legally it meant they couldn't try him. The court's response, they tortured him. They laid him on the ground and piled heavy stones on his chest to force him to enter a plea. And his only response, his last words were, "More weight." He died after 2 days in this final, unbelievable act of defiance.
A terror that intense, a fire that burns that hot, it just can't last forever. But as the hysteria finally started to fade, the people of Massachusetts were left to look around and grapple with the horror of what they had done. And that reckoning, well, it would take centuries.
Now, the actual trials, they were stopped pretty quickly once the governor finally got involved. But just look at this timeline. It took 5 years for the first real public apology, almost 20 years to get the first convictions overturned, and get this, 329 years before the last convicted victim was officially exonerated. That was in 2022. Justice in Salem moved at a truly glacial pace.
And this quote, it really gives you a window into the guilt that some of these people carried. It's from Samuel Sewell, one of the main judges. He had his minister read this apology aloud in church while he stood there in front of everyone, and he did it every single year for the rest of his life. He was one of the only officials to take that kind of deep, personal responsibility for what happened.
So why do we still tell this story? Why does Salem still fascinate us? Because it's become this powerful, vivid, cautionary tale. It's a fundamental warning about what happens when fear takes over, when we start scapegoating the vulnerable, and when our legal system completely fails to do its one job, protect the innocent.
And that brings us right back to the very first question, doesn't it? The story of Salem isn't really about the 17th century. It's a timeless lesson that forces us to look around today and ask, what are our modern-day witch hunts? When fear starts to replace facts in our own world, which one of us is truly safe?